This man lost his farm, and not because of anything that he did, but because somebody chose to make it a priority to take his farm from him and put their own family members in that farm, and then turn around and flip around and sell it for a hell of a profit of $300,000+.
I figured in the chicken business, you ain't gonna make no bunch of money, but you'll make enough to live. You know, I wanted better for my son than I had, and I wanted to provide for him a good, decent living. I've gone from making $30,000 to on welfare.
What it do, YouTube? This your man G. Lewis. Welcome back to the Sipp. Today's video, it's about a black farmer located in Forest County, Mississippi. His name is Carlton Sanders. Carlton Sanders is a third-generation farmer. He owns his own farm. His father and his father before him were also farmers. This video that I'm sharing with you is about how Carlton Sanders, an independent, hard-working black farmer, bought his own land and made all these outrageous upkeeps year after year, amassed a debt, was able to pay it down to $70,000 when everything went to hell. And now he is drawing welfare from the state of Mississippi. So without further ado, I'm gonna play this video.
I don't think there's a stronger type case of systemic racism in the American economy than agriculture. I mean, you just look at who owns wealth in this system and it's segregated.
My grandfather lived right down the street there, and he farmed cotton and corn, and my dad did the same thing. I remember a lot of times my dad, the white guy, he'd tell him how much to spend and how much he had to spend, and he better stretch his like his bubble gum and those type things. And for a while I was kind of ashamed of it, but as what we going through nowadays, I'm not ashamed of it anymore.
Wow. Did you hear what he just said? The landowner would tell his father he better stretch it like bubble gum, embarrassing him in front of his son. And now, Mr. Carlton Sanders, who's now an adult, said he's no longer ashamed of it. But back then, he felt embarrassed and ashamed for his father and for himself. I wonder what made him change his mind. He says nowadays, he don't feel that way. Maybe because he understands that the game, for lack of a better word, was a rigged system. It was meant to keep his father in debt. Now that he's went through it and he's now destitute, drawing welfare, he understands it now because he worked his ass off to buy his own property so that he can go into business for himself, only to have it taken away by the corporations in cahoots with the bank. Those unfair practices led to a lot of black people having their farms stole from them. After slavery came Reconstruction. Reconstruction lasted for a period of 12 years. During that time, a lot of blacks worked hard after slavery and they bought them plots of land. That land they took and went into business for themselves as farmers. At 1910, 1 out of every 7 farmers in the United States was black. You know what that number is today? In 2024, 90% of those black farmers don't exist anymore.
Some people have compared the contract poultry growing system to sharecropping in the sense that a farmer has little control over their business and in some cases don't even fully own it. They have a really restrictive relationship with one major buyer and are trapped in these cycles of debt that they're continuously paying off. It's an extension of the exploitation of black and brown labor that's existed in the food system since the institution of slavery. Over 90% of farms are owned by white people. People of color and black farmers in particular have been driven out of agriculture entirely and been actively undermined in keeping their land. And the same thing happens in the poultry industry, the same way that these companies have complete ability to pick winners and losers based on the inputs they give them or the equipment costs they require of them. Companies have been shown to target black farmers, especially in the South, and drive them out of business.
You heard what she just said. Black farmers were targeted to drive them out of business. That's what happened to Mr. Sanders. The bank was in cahoots with Cook's Foods. For whatever reason, which we'll get to in a minute, Cook's Food only had one black poultry breeder, and that was Carlton Sanders. Out of 173, all white, and this one black guy. And they put burden upon him intentionally to take him out of business and get that property. Let's go a little further.
Well, it started out with just simple things like new curtains, and they went from there to new brooders, new water line, static pressure, the curtains on the inside. I wanted new cool cells and the generator. Everything in my chicken house had been overhauled. Each one of those upgrades was around $150,000 to $250,000. Once the last money I got, they said, we won't never bother them again, we promise. And the next year, they came out with a list of 23 items on it. And that's what put me out of business. Because the bank said, we're not gonna loan any more money.
That's crazy. They kept stacking on demands for this guy. Upgrade this, upgrade that. And you hear what he said, the number ran up to? And then they told the bank and told him, well, we won't make any more demands on him to upgrade after this. But they lied. They continue to do the same thing. This frustrates me because you always have these people who always seem to know every damn thing and don't know a damn thing, especially when it comes to the history of blacks in America, particularly blacks who've been here working and toiling this land. The generations that come be after those people were still dealing with bondage type practices. So even if a black man worked hard, bought his own land, cultivated his land, and decided to go into business for himself, he still will become prey for corporations and those who didn't look like him, who wanted what he had, although he was starting 50 miles behind the starting line from where they came from. So when people talk about pull yourself up by the bootstraps, that's exactly what Carlton Sanders did. Third generation farmer, father, grandfather. By the time it got to his time to become a farmer, he was in a position to buy his own property. He put himself in a position financially to go and take out a loan and get his business up and running. So he did everything that people run around here talking about. This man is a prime example of everything that they call living the American dream and doing it the right way. And look what happened to him. Minding his own business, in business for himself, providing for his wife, his children, making his quota every year with Cook's Farms, and they were putting demands on him every year. Oh, you got to upgrade the sprinkler system. You got to upgrade the feeders. You got to upgrade this, that. And it wasn't asking the same of those 173 white independent poultry breeders at the same time.
The bank told me to sell the houses. They wanted their money. Didn't care where it came from. All they wanted was their money. They sent the deputy out there, and the deputy said, Mr. Sanders, I ain't never had no trouble out of you. He said, what? Why am I here? I says, I'm being foreclosed on. They're giving me 7 days to get out. This is my old home. I had 3 chicken houses here and 4 up there. And that was my house right there, and that's the compost and the barn right there that I built the house to. So this is pretty much everything that I did right here. You know, seeing something all falling and propped in like that, because I never would have let that happen. To have to lose like that.
That's crazy. Now, they bought the property from him. Well, the bank told him, sell it. Sell the property, get off from up under it. And now he's going back here looking at his own property. Property that he, as he said, I toiled. I built that home with my own bare hands. Ain't that what they always talking about, the American dream? You know, he turned nothing into something. And then to watch this, where all those, what you're looking at, those chicken farm buildings there, they're all just destroyed. They're just broken down, dilapidated. So basically the farm is not even used anymore to make money with. This is enough to drive anybody insane or piss them off to the point they do something that they, you know, probably end up regretting somewhere down the line. And that's how they treated this guy. And the bank said they didn't give a damn. They just wanted their money. Let's keep going.
To lose like that after putting all that sweat and blood into this, and it benefits somebody else. You know, it hurts me to look at it. It hurts me to know that somebody else.
Now that's his home. That's the home that he built. And he says it hurts him to see somebody else benefit off of his hard work.
Enjoying what I work for and, you know, all of the things that I accomplish, and, you know, just hurt me to my heart.
Mr. Sanders was pushed out as a black.
Now this right here is an attorney that he hired for himself. He realized he was getting bamboozled. So he reached out and he secured an attorney. And she basically is gonna put it out there and gonna keep it a buck and let you know exactly what the real is. You know what I'm saying? Check this out, what she got to say.
Black farmer, the last black farmer to be growing chickens for this chicken company in the whole state of Mississippi. The final list of demands that they imposed on him were demands that they were not imposing on the white farmers.
Let me pause that right there. The following complaints from Sanders and another black farmer against Cook's Farms, a USDA investigator determined there was, quote, evidence of unjust discrimination. Now this is by the USDA. Evidence of unjust discrimination, and that the company violated government regulations on meat producers. So the federal government got involved with this after he filed a lawsuit, and they said, yeah, you're getting bamboozled. But what happened?
Curiously, the bank valued the property at one very high number.
I want to pause it there just for a second. Check out how this bank was slick. Watch how they finessed this whole situation. Check this out.
When Mr. Sanders' son offered to try to buy it and was taking out the loan, and they said, no, we're not going to let your son buy this property.
Did you hear what this lawyer just said? She said his son stepped in to save the family's farm, and the bank said no. They refused to sell that farm to his son to keep that property in the family.
Our allegation in the complaint is that it was sold in foreclosure for a fraction, ultimately, of the amount that it was valued at by the bank to a company that's owned by a relative of employees of the chicken company.
Bam, boom. There it is. Somebody in that family that worked for the chicken company, for Cook's Chickens, they wanted that property of his. And from what I'm understanding, a company that's believed they had business ties with Cook's Foods had a family member that worked for Cook's Food, and they were the ones who benefited from the foreclosure on Mr. Carlton farm. If that ain't low-handed, dirty, let me keep going, man.
Bought the farm for $110,000. That's what he told me. And he turned around and sold it for $390,000.
He said 100,000 or 120, but they posted up there. They actually paid 130 for it. And did you hear the number that they got for it? Over $300,000. The bank made out like a fat rat. They made out like a fat rat. And the son was willing to pay them what they were asking. And these people swooped in behind him and got the property for cheaper than what they were not going to sell it to his son. This is crazy, man. This is crazy. But let's go a little further.
You know how much I paid for that place, the house, and all those chicken houses in our land? $1 million. It hurts.
I gotta pause it there. This man said he was vested $1 million into that property. $1 million into that property. And he lost it all. And his son couldn't swoop in and take over the debt by buying this property because the bank refused to even put him in a position to buy the property. And then they sold it for 300%. They made out like a fat rat. And this man had to sit back and bite the bullet and couldn't do nothing but just watch this go down the way it went down. But he got a lawyer.
I plan on dying here and, spend the rest of my life right here and leaving it for my son and all that kind of stuff. And this was home right here. And now we got to try to find a place to call home again.
This gentleman is now dependent on the state of Mississippi and the federal government for subsidies, food stamps, and welfare. A man who had bought his own property, who toiled the land, worked hard, did what they say he needed to do in order to be prosperous and successful in this country. He watched his father and grandfather be humiliated working on someone else's property and had no say-so. And he was adamant on doing different when it became his time to be the man. And he was able to become the man, only to have it all taken from him by some unscrupulous acts and unfair practices by a corporation and a bank. This is nothing more than systemic corporate discrimination and racism. Now, I'm not going to play the rest of this video, but I just want to touch on the fact that this gentleman said that he had amassed the debt the first time around up to $750,000 making those renovations and upkeeps over the course of many years. And he had then paid it down to $70,000. He said somehow Cook's Food got wind of the situation that he was about to be clear and scot-free of any debt with them, and they started placing demands on him to upgrade even more. Out of 174 of their independent contractors, Mr. Sanders was the only black one, and he was the only one that these demands were placed on to continuously make these renovations. So they knew that once he got down to that $70,000, they would not be able to hold any more debt over his head. Everything that he do now in the breeding process is straight profit for him. He don't have to take none of that money and put it back into fixing up and making renovations. Now he could really be at a point where he can amass wealth for himself and his family. They saw that coming. And as he said in a clip that I'm not even going to show, but he said that somehow they got wind, meaning Cook's Food, got wind that he was down to paying only owing $70,000 left on that $750,000 debt. And they stepped in and started making more demands on him. And at that time is when he said, I can't do it. The bank even admitted that they were putting unnecessary demands on his farm. And they were not willing to tote that debt and give him a line of debt no further, no longer. That is what caused him to have to foreclose and ultimately end up on welfare, where he remains to this day. Although this makes me feel some type of way, this is not uncommon. Black farmers have always had to do more with less and still end up coming out on the bottom. And many have lost their farms just as this man has lost his. This is your man, G. Lewis, and I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking around to the end of this video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. For more content like this, I plan to bring to you guys in the future. Till next time, take care of yourself. Take care of your people.